Underneath the skin of the killer whale lies a thick, 6-inch layer of fat called blubber. During the feeding season, this whale's blubber layer can actually grow up to 20 inches thick. Blubber insulates the whale from the freezing water of the ocean and also serves as an energy source when available food resources are low. Blubber is vital to the survival of killer whales, like this one. Without it, survival in the ocean would be impossible. Lipids are one of the 4 main classes of large biological molecules. Lipids are grouped together because they share one important trait. They are all hydrophobic, or mix poorly with water. Today, we'll explore the 3 most biologically important types of lipids: fats, which make up blubber, phospholipids, and steroids. Fats are constructed from 2 kinds of smaller molecules, glycerol and fatty acids. Looking at the molecular structure of a glycerol, we can see that it is based off of a carbon chain 3 carbons long, with each carbon being bonded to a hydroxyl group. On the other hand, fatty acids are also based off of a long carbon skeleton, around 16 to 18 carbons in length. At one end of this fatty acid lies a carboxyl group, which is what makes the fatty acid acidic. The rest of the skeleton forms a hydrocarbon chain. In actually constructing a fat, 3 fatty acid molecules are joined to one glycerol through ester linkage, a bond between hydroxyl and carboxyl groups. Ester linkages are formed when a fatty acid and a glycerol undergo dehydration synthesis and are linked together. When all 3 fatty acids are bound to the glycerol, the resulting fat is called a triacylglycerol. There are 2 different types of fatty acids: saturated and unsaturated. Saturated fatty acids are completely saturated with as many hydrogens as they can hold. There are no double bonds between carbons, and the fatty acid is straight. In unsaturated fatty acids, there may be double bonds between carbons, creating a kink in the hydrocarbon chain like so. You'll notice that in this unsaturated fat, 2 hydrogens are missing because of this kink. It isn't completely saturated with hydrogen, and thus is an unsaturated fatty acid. Depending on the type of fatty acids that a fat contains, it is either labeled as a saturated or unsaturated fat. However, there is a special type of unsaturated fatty acid called a trans fatty acid, in which a double bond between 2 carbons is created, but the fatty acid stays straight with no kinks. Fats containing trans fatty acids, or trans fats, are especially harmful to the human body because they contribute to the buildup of plaque in blood vessels. Because they're so common in processed and baked goods, some US cities have put restrictions on them. Moving on, phospholipids are essential lipids that make up cell membranes. This is what a single phospholipid looks like. As you can see, there is a glycerol here, but it only has 2 fatty acids attached to it rather than 3. Binded to the glycerol is a phosphate head. You can also draw a single phospholipid as a head with 2 tails, the head being the phosphate and the tails being the 2 fatty acids. Since this head is a phosphate group, it's polar, so the head of a phospholipid is actually hydrophilic. Meanwhile, the tails are lipids, so they're hydrophobic. To actually construct the cell membrane, the phospholipids are stacked such that it forms a bilayer, the hydrophobic tails pointing inward, and the hydrophilic heads on the surfaces of the cell membrane. Without phospholipids, cells could not exist. Steroids are a special type of lipid characterized by a carbon skeleton with 4 fused rings. Steroids are not composed of glycerol or fatty acids. They are classified as lipids because they are hydrophobic and cannot dissolve in water. They do not resemble fats. An important steroid in animals would be cholesterol. It is a common component in animal cell membranes. They also serve the base from which other steroids are synthesized. However, high cholesterol in the blood can contribute to the buildup of plaque in blood vessel walls. In fact, trans fats exert their negative impact on health through affecting cholesterol levels. Today, We looked at the molecular structure of fats, how phospholipids build the cell membrane, and at how steroids can affect animals. See you next time!